Engineer Dominic Hayes wiped the sweat from his brow as he stepped off the transport shuttle onto Station Kepler 7. The artificial gravity here was set to Terran standard, but he could already feel the difference in air pressure, thinner, with a metallic tang that spoke of recycled atmosphere pushed to its limits. "You're the human?" a voice called from across the landing bay. Dominic turned to see her. Tall, impossibly tall, with limbs that seemed to flow rather than move. Her skin had an opalescent quality, shifting between pale blue and silver under the station's harsh lighting. She wore a standard engineering jumpsuit, but it seemed inadequate to contain the graceful, almost liquid way she carried herself. "Dominic Hayes, Terran Engineering Corps," he said, extending his hand. She looked at it for a moment before carefully clasping it. Her fingers were longer than his, with an extra joint that allowed them to curl in ways human hands couldn't. "Nira, I'm your liaison for the transit hub repair." "Right, the energy conduit collapse." Dominic pulled up his datapad, scrolling through the schematics. "Command said it's critical. If we don't fix it within 48 hours, the entire station loses its connection to the jump network." Nira nodded, her neck bending at an angle that made Dominic's spine ache in sympathy. Her people, the Valathi, had evolved on a world with gravity only 60% of Earth's. Their bones were more cartilage than calcium, their joints designed for mobility over strength. In the station's full gravity, she must be uncomfortable, though she showed no sign of it. "The main problem is access," she explained, leading him through the corridors. "The conduit runs through the old infrastructure. Spaces designed when the station was smaller before the expansion. Some of the passages are..." She paused, searching for the word. "Challenging." They reached the engineering bay, where a massive holographic display showed the damaged section. The energy conduit curved through a series of tight spaces, some no wider than a meter across. In one section, the passage twisted at nearly 90 degrees. "We need someone to manually realign the quantum couplings," Nira said, her voice steady but her eyes avoiding his. "The automatons can't navigate the curves. The tolerance is too precise." Dominic studied the display, his engineer's mind already working through the problem. Then he looked at Nira, at her fluid form, her flexible frame. The solution seemed obvious. "You could fit through there easily," he said. "Your people, you're built for this kind of work. I've read about Valathi flexibility. You can compress your skeletal structure, right?" Something flickered across her face. Not quite fear, but close. She turned back to the display, her fingers dancing across the controls. "Yes," she said quietly, "my people can do that." But Dominic heard what she didn't say. He heard the hesitation, the weight behind those words, and for the first time since arriving, he wondered what he'd walked into. The access tunnel was worse than the schematics had suggested. Dominic crouched at the entrance, shining his work light into the darkness. The passage started wide enough, maybe 1.5 meters, but within 3 meters it narrowed considerably. The walls were lined with aging conduit housing, leaving even less space for navigation. And that wasn't even the worst part. "The twist is at marker 12, Nira said from behind him, her voice tight. She was reviewing her portable scanner, but her hands trembled slightly. "That's where the coupling failed. The entire energy matrix is destabilized there." "Can you talk me through what I'm looking at?" Dominic asked, pulling back from the entrance. "I want to understand the full scope before we proceed." Nira's relief was palpable, though she tried to hide it. She pulled up a detailed cross-section. The quantum coupling requires manual calibration because the energy signature shifts based on physical proximity. An automaton would disrupt the field. It needs a living being's bioelectric field to stabilize while adjustments are made. "And the twist at marker 12? "The passage narrows to 80 centimeters and turns 90 degrees horizontally, then 45 degrees vertically. She demonstrated with her hands, which bent at angles that made Dominic's stomach turn. "For my people, this would typically be manageable." That word again. Typically. "All right," Dominic said, making a decision he'd been considering since they arrived. "Let's try something. I'll rig up a remote calibration arm. It'll take me a few hours, but..." Nira's voice was sharp. "We don't have time. Every hour we delay, the cascade effect worsens. In 18 hours, the conduit will catastrophically fail. The explosion would breach the hull in 3 sections. She stood, squaring her shoulders. I can do this. Dominic wanted to argue, but the numbers didn't lie. They were out of time. They prepared carefully. Nira stripped down to a form-fitting underlayer that would allow maximum movement. Dominic fitted her with communication equipment and a safety tether. He attached sensor arrays that would monitor her position and vital signs. Talk to me the whole time, he instructed. Any discomfort, any problem, you stop immediately. Understood? Nira nodded, but wouldn't meet his eyes. She entered the tunnel with enviable grace, her body seeming to flow into the narrow space. Dominic watched on his monitors as she progressed. 3 meters, 6 meters, 9 meters. Approaching the first constriction, she reported, her voice calm. Then he heard it. A sharp intake of breath, almost a gasp. Nira? It's fine, just tighter than expected. But her vital signs had spiked. Heart rate elevated, respiratory rate increasing. You're at 11 meters. 1 more meter to the twist. On the monitor, he watched her approach the curved section. Her body began to compress, joints flexing in ways that seemed impossible. But then... Stop! Her voice cracked through the comm. Stop, I can't... Something in her tone made Dominic's blood run cold. I'm pulling you out, Dominic said immediately, reaching for the safety tether controls. No, I can... Nira's voice was strained, desperate. I just need to adjust. Nira, I'm seeing stress markers all over your skeletal readouts. You're done. You don't understand. There was panic now, raw and unfiltered. I have to finish this. I have to prove. Prove what? Dominic kept his voice calm, even as his hands worked the tether mechanism, slowly drawing her back. That you can hurt yourself? That's not what this mission needs. The silence on the other end was worse than her panic. It took 4 minutes to extract her from the tunnel. When she emerged, her face was flushed, whatever the Valathi equivalent of flushed was, and her breathing was ragged. She wouldn't look at him. I failed, she whispered. You did nothing of the sort. That passage is a death trap. Dominic handed her a hydration pack. What I don't understand is why you pushed yourself so hard. Your readouts were showing structural stress at the 9-meter mark. Nira was silent for a long moment. Then slowly, she rolled up her sleeve. Along her forearm, barely visible under the opalescent skin, were faint lines, surgical scars, old but distinct. They ran in geometric patterns that spoke of extensive medical intervention. I was born with developmental rigidity syndrome, she said quietly. It's rare among my people, less than 2% of the population. My skeletal structure formed with more calcification than normal, more like, she gestured at him, like yours, actually, just less extreme. Dominic stared at the scars. They tried to correct it? 3 times. The surgeries helped somewhat. I can pass for normal in most situations. But extreme flexibility, sustained compression? She shook her head. Mine isn't that flexible. It never was. Why didn't you tell me before we started? Because on my world, rigidity is shameful. Her voice dropped even lower. We evolved in low gravity. Flexibility is what defines us. It's in our art, our sports, our courtship rituals. Those of us with DRS are considered defective, lesser. I've spent my entire career proving I'm just as capable as anyone else. By nearly breaking your spine in a maintenance tunnel? I've done it before, she admitted. Pushed through the pain. Completed missions no one thought I could handle. But this time... She finally looked at him, and he saw tears gathering in her large, dark eyes. This time, I couldn't. And now thousands of people will die because I'm not flexible enough. Dominic was quiet for a moment, his mind racing through possibilities. Then he stood, pulling up the schematics again. No, he said firmly. They're going to live because we're going to find another way, and you're going to help me figure out what that is. Nira looked at him in disbelief. What? You heard me. Get up, Engineer Nira. We have work to do. The engineering bay became a war room. Dominic had commandeered 3 additional terminals, filling the holographic space with overlapping schematics, material specifications, and simulation models. Nira watched him work with a mixture of confusion and growing hope. What are you doing? She asked. Solving the problem without breaking my engineer in the process? He zoomed in on the conduit twist. You said the issue is bioelectric stabilization during calibration, right? The quantum coupling needs a living field to maintain coherence. Yes, but... So the problem isn't the calibration itself, it's the delivery method. Dominic pulled up a design template. What if we don't send a person through at all? The automatons disrupt the field, Nira reminded him. Right, but that's because they're using conventional power sources. He sketched rapidly on the interface. What if we create a bioconductive probe, something that mimics organic bioelectric signature but can be remotely controlled? Nira moved closer, studying his design. Her engineering instincts kicked in, pushing past her emotional exhaustion. You'd need organic shielding for the electronics, and the probe would have to be incredibly flexible to navigate the twist. Exactly. And you know what's flexible? Dominic grinned. Human-manufactured synthetic polymers. We don't need bones, Nira. We need engineering. For the first time since her failed attempt, Nira smiled. The station has a materials fabricator in Bay 7. If we can design the probe structure... You design it. You know the quantum coupling requirements better than I do. I'll work on the bioelectric mimicry system. They worked through the night. Dominic had to admit, once Nira let go of the shame and focused on pure problem-solving, she was brilliant. She understood the energy systems at a level he couldn't match, compensating for variables he hadn't even considered. The probe needs to maintain field coherence for at least 90 seconds during calibration, she explained, adjusting a parameter. If it drops below threshold, even for a moment, the cascade accelerates. Then we give it redundant field generators. Dominic added components to his design. 3 separate systems, each capable of maintaining the field independently. If one fails, the others compensate. That'll make it heavier, harder to navigate the twist. So we add articulated joints here, here, and here. He demonstrated on the model. Think of it like a mechanical snake, each segment independently controlled. Nira's eyes widened. That could work, but the control system would be incredibly complex. Lucky for us, complex is what humans do best. Dominic initiated the fabrication sequence. We've got 16 hours until catastrophic failure. This probe will be ready in 4. That gives us 12 hours for testing and deployment. And if it doesn't work? Dominic met her eyes. Then we try something else, but I promise you, Nira, we're not asking you to break yourself again. Never again. She nodded slowly. Thank you. No one's ever just stopped before when I said I couldn't. Then no one was treating you like a colleague. They were treating you like a tool. The probe was beautiful. 1.5 meters of articulated synthetic polymer, embedded with bioelectric field generators and quantum sensors. It looked almost organic, the way it moved through its test sequences. Field coherence is stable, Nira reported from her station. Articulation response time is under 50 milliseconds. This might actually work. Dominic guided the probe into the access tunnel, his hands steady on the controls. The first 9 meters went smoothly, the probe's segments flexing and adjusting to navigate the narrow space. Approaching the constriction, he said. This was the critical moment. The probe began to compress, its segments rotating in sequence. Dominic watched the telemetry, making micro-adjustments as Nira called out field strength readings. 85% coherence, 87, 92. The probe navigated the first curve, then the vertical twist. Dominic felt sweat dripping down his back despite the climate control. 12 meters. You're at the coupling site. Nira leaned forward, her fingers dancing across the calibration controls, beginning quantum realignment now. For 90 seconds, the bay was silent except for the hum of equipment. Dominic watched the field readings, watched Nira's face, watched the structural stress indicators on the conduit system. "Calibration complete," Nira finally announced. "Field coherence maintained throughout. The coupling is stable." Dominic let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. "Extract the probe. Let's make sure the repair holds." They monitored the system for the next 2 hours. The conduit's energy flow stabilized. The cascade effect halted. The quantum coupling held firm. Station Kepler 7 was safe. Later, in the observation deck, they watched the stars together. Nira had changed into civilian clothes, a flowing garment that accommodated her form more comfortably than the engineering suit. "The station administrator wants to commend us," she said quietly. "Public recognition for preventing the disaster." "How do you feel about that?" "Terrified," she admitted. "Everyone will know that I couldn't complete the repair myself, that I needed adaptation." "No." Dominic turned to face her. "Everyone will know that 2 engineers solved an impossible problem through innovation and collaboration. That's the story, Nira. Not your DRS, not your limitations, the solution." She was quiet for a moment. "On my world, I would have been expected to keep trying, to push through until I succeeded or broke trying, the mission above all else." "That's not engineering, that's martyrdom," Dominic smiled. "Engineering is about finding the best solution with the resources available. Today, those resources included your knowledge, my fabrication skills, and our combined refusal to accept a suicide mission as the only option." Nira's eyes shimmered. "Thank you. For stopping when I asked, for listening." "For what it's worth," Dominic said, "I think your people have it backwards. Rigidity isn't weakness. It's just a different kind of strength. You don't need to bend like everyone else to be an exceptional engineer." She smiled, genuinely this time. "Perhaps you're right." Above them, the stars shone steady and bright, and the station hummed with the power of a repair that proved adaptation was stronger than force. The end.